So the Hill decided to take a look into AOC's top marginal tax idea of 70%. And this is something that if you listen to mainstream media or people in the DC elite bubble, they scoff at this idea. They think it's crazy. They think it's dumb. Many of them have no idea that during the golden age of economic expansion in the U.S., the top marginal tax rate was between 70% and 93%. So you want to talk about condescension and looking down their nose at the left. This is like crank the smug meter up to 9,000. Like, that's the reaction when AOC floated this. And by the way, the insane comparison, which I've now seen regularly, because they've been running articles like this nonstop, is, AOC's the Sarah Palin of the left. Are you kidding me? Sarah Palin is damn near brain dead. I'm sorry if that's offensive, but she's really unintelligent, like insanely unintelligent. AOC actually knows what the fuck she's talking about. She's smart. And if you can't see the difference there, and you don't understand that that's not a good comparison, that in fact it's really dumb, then perhaps you're not that bright either. Or at the very least, you're not well-versed on policy stuff, and you just have no idea about politics. So, really insane comparison that we have to mock and make fun of because it's just utterly ludicrous. So, they pulled this idea, and let's see what the American people think. Would you support raising the highest tax rate to 70%? By the way they frame the question is even bullshitty. But 59% say yes, 41% say no. So for all the mocking and all the scorn and all the laughing and there were countless articles written that were like, this is how the Democrats lose elections when they're so out of touch and they float ideas like a top tax rate of 70%. Yes. It's fucking popular. It's popular, and they didn't even ask the question the right way. You have to throw the word marginal in there. You have to say, would you support raising the highest marginal tax rate to 70%? The fact that you didn't add the word marginal in there means the question is actually just wrong. Because if you're not clarifying that it's a marginal tax rate of 70%, then some people might think you actually mean, like, no, the government literally takes 70% of somebody's money. So that's not what that means. The top marginal tax rate means, and the specific number AOC floated was over $10 million. She said 60 to 70% over $10 million. So what that means is, let's say somebody makes $11 million in a year. I know, try not to have your heart bleed too much for them. That means the first $10 million is taxed at lower rates in a progressive tax rate system, and every dollar above that $10 million mark is taxed at 70%. So that means just $1 million of the $11 million that somebody made in a year, just $1 million of that is taxed at 70%, and that doesn't even include loopholes and deductions. And I'm sure once you include those in, it'll be similar to like it was during the golden age of economic expansion, where the actual effective tax rate was like 43 or 45%. So that's the other thing that everybody's ignoring, is that if you actually make the rate that doesn't mean that's the nominal rate. That's just the rate on paper. That's not the effective rate, which is the rate that somebody actually pays. So the rate that they would actually pay is probably closer to 43 or 45%. So this is, and by the way, this idea is just mainstream economic idea. You look at fucking Sweden has a 70% top marginal rate, and that it kicks in at a much lower number than what AOC is talking about. She's talking about over $10 million. A lot of social democracies have a 70% rate, and it kicks in over $1 million or even lower sometimes. So this isn't a radical idea. And even with the question being framed in a bullshit way, where people can misinterpret that as the government taking 70% of all of somebody's income for a year, even with it framed that way, 59% support it. These are popular ideas. Hey guys, FDR got elected 4 times. The Republicans came up with the idea of term limits because they thought, holy shit, if we don't do term limits, we might never get elected president ever again. Why? Because these social democratic policies are so popular that why would they vote for us when they got a guy who on the economic front is doing what people want? So this is what happens when you have social democracy and when you push for policies that help average people. You're going to win, and you're going to win in a landslide. Like, we've all gotten used to this idea of like, oh, well, the pendulum goes back and forth in elections, and that's just how it works, and it'll be Democrat, Republican, and maybe you get 2 terms of one party or the other, but the pendulum will go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's not like a law of nature. That's not set in stone. If you have a party or a president that actually represents people and helps them out and does the right thing and does what they want, it's possible you just get endless election wins for one side of the aisle. So FDR was elected 4 times and died in office. He would have kept winning if he stayed alive because his policies were popular. So AOC is saying, hey, why don't we act like New Deal Democrats and push for social democracy and do this stuff that used to be popular and we know would help regular people? And she's laughed at. She's laughed at by the elite DC class, which shows you they have no idea. They are so insanely out of touch. It's comical. Like, honestly, it's one thing if you're in that circle, and let's say you have a really high income, and so you prefer the establishment and the system we have now, and you're a centrist. That's one thing. But even if you're in that group, you have to be smart enough to know that that doesn't mean that the country agrees with you. That doesn't mean that, like, average people agree that the status quo is wonderful. But honestly, these people are too dumb and too mired in their own bubble that they think, like, well, obviously everybody agrees that Mitt Romney and John Kasich and Claire McCaskill are wonderful politicians. No, people don't agree to that. You and your bubble agree to that. By the way, corporate media has been doing a hiring fest recently. Hiring fest, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying. And they hired Claire McCaskill, John Kasich, the 2 I just mentioned, and there was one other who I'm forgetting now. But, like, anybody who is a Republican or a Democrat and, like, agrees that the establishment is wonderful and we should all just do what corporate donors want, those are the ones that they hire. And they honestly believe, like, we're showing the world how to be bipartisan and that this is the way forward. No, people hate the current order. People hate the system we have now because they're struggling. Congress has a 19% approval rating, and these idiots are like, let's get some wonderful politicians from Congress. No! Don't. To be fair, Claire McCaskill was the Senate, and John Kasich was governor of Ohio? I think it was Ohio. But their idea is the establishment, great. So AOC comes along and busts it all up and says, no, the establishment sucks, and we need to do bold ideas that help the people. And she gets laughed at and called Sarah Palin. And then you poll it, even when it's framed the wrong way, people are still like, yeah, she's right. I agree with her. They're so out of touch. They're going to fuck up and make her president. I'm telling you, between the Republicans who can't fucking stop attacking her for dumb shit, like when she danced in high school or college or whatever it was, and between the establishment that looks down their nose at her like, Adam Johnson made a great point. Meghan McCain was going after AOC. And you get this fucking vibe from the back and forth that, like, Meghan McCain thinks, well, the help is getting uppity, and that's why she's against her. And that's kind of true. Like, you got this person born with a silver spoon in her mouth who's been handed everything in her entire fucking life, and she sees somebody from a working class background who makes it and who's super popular, and she's like, ooh, the help is getting uppity. I'm not sure I'm okay with this. So they're going to fuck up and make her president, man. By the way, AOC's been in office not that long at all. She already has more followers than I think any congressperson. And now you see all of them trying to copy her, and like Elizabeth Warren was doing a live stream and drinking a beer, and it's like, come on. The reason she does it and she's popular and she gets away with it and people think it's totally normal is that she's a millennial. And she's not trying to appeal to anybody. She's just kind of being herself, and people like it. Whereas you now see, like, Beto O'Rourke live-streamed himself at the fucking dentist. What are you doing, bro? Nobody wants to see your fucking gross-ass mouth. What are you gonna do, live-stream yourself taking a shit next? Come on, man. It's so stupid. So they're trying, all the others are trying too hard and they're mimicking. I'm not kidding. Okay, not joking. I saw a tweet the other day and they were serious. AOC is hosting like a little gathering of other Congress people because the other Congress people were like, we want to get some of her social media mojo. How do we do that? And it was either Shoykot, I think it was Shoykot Chakrabarti tweeted, or one of the Justice Democrats folks. He was like, these people don't understand. Like, you want to get a large social media following? Support Medicare for all and free college and a living wage and ending the wars and a Green New Deal. Like, support popular policies, and it turns out you become popular. But all the people in Congress are so fucking dumb and they got their blinders on. They're like, how do we get some of this social media mojo? What if I just live stream myself sipping a beverage? Will that work? Will I then get 1 million followers? No, you won't. Oh my God, you're so dumb. Okay. All right. So I got to give you a little bit more information on this. They say women support the idea of a 70% top marginal tax rate by a 62 to 38% margin. A majority of men back it as well, 55% to 45%. The proposal is popular in all regions of the country, with a majority of Southerners backing it by a 57 to 43% margin. Rural voters back it as well, 56% to 44%. Increasing the highest tax bracket to 70% garners a surprising amount of support among Republican voters. The Hill-Harris X poll, 45% of GOP voters say they favor it, while 55% are opposed to it. Jesus Christ, it's almost half of GOP voters. Independent voters who were contacted backed the tax idea by a 60% to 40% margin, while Democratic ones favored it, 71% to 29%. All right. So the most important thing to take away from this segment is the following. Across the board in corporate media, they are 100% factually incorrect when they make the argument, as they've been doing nonstop, that the only way to win in the middle of the country and to get the swing voters and to get the Republican crossover voters is for Democrats to run candidates like Joe Donnelly and Claire McCaskill, who just fucking lost. They are convinced the Democrats are going to lose voters in the middle of the country, who they already don't have, by the way. They're going to lose them unless they go further right wing. We've been running that model for over 30 years, and you keep losing. Perhaps the idea is you don't run further right wing voters. Perhaps the idea is, for the right wing candidates, you run more populist candidates. See, and AOC points this out, and she's 100% correct. The real divide in this country is not Democrat versus Republican, right versus left. The real divide in this country is the establishment versus regular people. Moneyed interest elites versus the average Joe and Jane. So populism versus elites. Populism versus the establishment. That's the real breakdown in the country. And it turns out when politicians take a stand on the side of the people, like AOC does with the idea of a top marginal tax rate of 70%, you even get like half of Republican voters who are like, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. This stuff is so obvious and it's sitting right in front of our faces, but the idiots in corporate media, honestly, are paid to not understand it. They're paid to argue the status quo is great because they make a lot of money. Certainly the owners of the 6 major corporations that give you all your media, they make a lot of money. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want AOC's idea implemented because, God forbid, that means their taxes are going up. They're the elites. They're the owners of society. They don't want their taxes going up, so they're going to put out people, mindless drones who are just going to parrot what they want them to say. And obviously Wolf Blitzer's not going to rock the boat, and obviously he's going to pretend like this is an unpopular idea when it's been proven it is a massively popular idea. So this is great. This is wonderful. That sound you're hearing, as many people have pointed out on Twitter, is the Overton window moving left, and I love it.